The soft light of the restaurant glimmered against the raindrops on the window. A man in an expensive black suit sat at the corner table, checking his watch for the 5th time. He wasn't supposed to be here. He hated blind dates. But tonight, something felt different. Just as he was about to leave, the door opened, and a woman soaked in rain stepped in. Her eyes met his. For the first time in years, the powerful man who thought he had everything forgot how to breathe. Little did he know, this wasn't just another blind date. It was the night that would rewrite everything he believed about love, trust, and second chances. The man who had everything, except someone to come home to. The world knew Alexander Grant as a billionaire, the ruthless CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the country. A man who built an empire from scratch. Reporters called him a visionary. Shareholders called him untouchable. But behind those steel-gray eyes and tailored suits was a man who, every night, returned to an empty penthouse overlooking the city lights. He had money, power, and respect. But when the board meetings ended and the office lights went out, silence was his only company. He had loved once. Years ago. But after that heartbreak, the kind that cuts too deep to heal, he promised himself never to fall again. He filled his days with work, his nights with empty parties, and his life with people who smiled for the cameras but never saw him for who he truly was. Then came his best friend, Daniel Hayes, who refused to give up on him. Alex, man, you've built a castle. But even a king needs someone to share it with. Alexander laughed it off every time. Until Daniel forced his hand. One blind date. Just one. If it's awful, I'll never bring it up again. That's how Alexander found himself sitting at Le Jardin, a small, quiet restaurant tucked away from the noise of the world. A place where he thought no one would recognize him. He wasn't looking for love. He wasn't expecting anything. In fact, part of him hoped she wouldn't even show up. But then, she did. When she walked in, she wasn't like the women he was used to. No designer dresses. No polished, rehearsed smiles. She rushed in, her umbrella half broken from the wind, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes. But her laughter, soft, embarrassed, real, was something he hadn't heard in years. "Hi. I'm late," she said, pushing back her wet hair. "I almost slipped on the sidewalk." "You must be Alexander." He nodded, stunned by the way she said his name, not like the world said it, but like it was just a name. Not a brand. Her name was Emma Collins. She wasn't a model or a socialite. She was a literature teacher who loved old books, rainy days, and laughing at her own mistakes. She wasn't impressed by his wealth. In fact, she didn't even know who he really was. Daniel had set up the date without telling her. They talked. And talked. About childhood dreams, embarrassing moments, the smell of old libraries, the way cities looked at night. For the first time, Alexander wasn't a CEO. He was just a man, listening to a woman who made the world feel less heavy. But as the night grew deeper, so did the silence between his heartbeats. He knew she didn't know his truth. And a part of him was terrified, because the moment she found out who he was, she'd probably run. Everyone always did. She smiled and said, "I don't know why I agreed to this blind date. I guess something told me it might change everything." His chest tightened. He'd said those exact words to himself when he walked in. And in that quiet moment, between a man who had everything and a woman who wanted nothing but honesty, something unexplainable happened. He felt alive. To be continued. Chapter 3 teaser. But secrets can't stay hidden forever. When Emma discovers who Alexander really is, will she stay for the man behind the empire? Or walk away from a world she never wanted to be part of? Sometimes, love isn't about how big your world is. It's about who's willing to walk through the rain to find you.